How do you guys think Kamaru Usman's feeling today? You ever think of that? Usman was put in an extremely unideal position, which is he's got his hand done. He already knows who his next opponent is, Leon, who you guys said it should be. Not Kamaru said I want. Kamaru's already fought him. Kamaru's already beat him. You guys said Leon's earned his way back and you must do this. And Kamaru, listen, okay. That's what I'll do then. I'm assuming Usman would like parity, but I'm following the golden rule of life. Put myself in someone else's shoes. How would I want to be treated? I would rather have new guys than repeat guys. Usman says, okay, because you guys said this is the guy. So Usman agrees to fight him. He gets his hand done. He's looking for a date. Everything's cool in the gang. And all of a sudden, you get this young guy who's unproven and unranked, who hasn't been in a co-main event, main event, no championship rounds. Forget about all that kind of stuff. And anywhere you go, this is who you get asked about. And then you get told, Kamaru Usman gets told he's scared to fight Chimaev. It's a mess, guys. Adesanya got the exact same spot that Usman was in. Usman told the truth, which is, man, that guy he looks pretty exciting. Yes, I agree with you. I could see us together someday. There's nothing more that Usman can say. What he's going to say, take a spot away from Leon after you guys have made it crystal clear that you want, you've changed your mind, and Usman's supposed to change his mind right along with him. And the one thing that you get is the champ is you don't have to have that fresh draw. And I can assure you, Usman doesn't give a damn as much as you guys think he does because he's a wrestler. Usman would show up to a tournament every Saturday. They'd see the top 6, but there's 30 guys in the bracket, and he knows full well those other 24 guys that are going to get thrown in at random can be better than 1 through 6. They just didn't get recognized yet. So you're not going to intimidate a wrestler. You're not even going to hurt his feelings if he went out and fought and ended up losing. But the one thing you get is a champion, and that is what Kamaru is. It's the only thing that you get, is you don't have to take anybody brand new. Nobody's getting signed to an organization and gets to walk into a title fight. Nobody goes from unranked into a world title fight. And the only relevance to that is now you get to see some footage on the guy. That's it. That is the one and only advantage that you get. Everything else is a disadvantage. Yes, you get to wear the crown, but you don't get anything for it in terms of an advantage. So for Kamaru Usman to say, get him some fights, that's right. That's what a champion gets. Adesanya dealt with the same thing. Adesanya also, much like Kamaru, said, yeah, he looks pretty good. I'm going to worry about him when I have to worry about him. I'm just explaining to you that there's only one rule that's different for champions than everybody else. Number 2 ranked guy could take on a guy that's not even signed to the organization. He could take him on next week. The guy gets a contract today. That's real. A champion can't. A champion gets to see the field. A champion gets to study. It's the one and only thing that he gets. But I only bring this to you because imagine being Kamaru Usman. So Kamaru wants all the money. He wants the recognition of being the GOAT, which is done by his peers, and he got it. He wants the world championship, which means he gets main events, including at venues like Madison Square Garden, of which he just did. But then he has to come out here and demand for opinion as well. How dare you have an opinion that this 24-year-old Chechnyan fighter is better than me just because he's on a bit of a hot streak? I mean, what's Kamaru supposed to do? He's already listened to you guys. He already took you into account, and that's what Leon represents. So what do you want him to do? Now, all of a sudden, you haven't done anything different. You're number 1 ranked pound for pound. You're grabbing all the money. You're headlining Madison Square Garden. You got the big, beautiful golden belt. And without doing anything different, people now realize, oh, geez, turns out maybe you are still the best. Right? Maybe it is a little bit too much, a little bit too soon. Maybe this young guy has got something great and he could challenge you down the road. I'm just asking, how do you think Kamaru Usman feels today? Because the reality is nothing has changed. Not one thing is different in Kamaru's life. He didn't go get better. He didn't go get a new camp. He didn't start focusing more. He didn't start being more disciplined. Nothing has changed, but your perception did. So how would you feel if you're Kamaru Usman now? Colby versus Chimaev can only happen. This is for me. This is for me. So that means there's no power attached to this. This is within my mind, but let me speak freely. That can only happen if it's a number 1 contenders fight. I don't know how you're going to get Colby, who's ranked number 1. Everybody ranked number 1 gets to fight for a world championship, except Colby Covington. So what do you give that guy? You're going to put him in a main event. Now he's got to go 25 minutes. 25 minutes with Chimaev. Chimaev and Colby, because of the way they fight. 25 minutes changes your life. 15 minutes is enough, but that's not the atmosphere. They're going to go in for 25 minutes. And I'm only asking you, for what? For what? There's a point in your career where, to compete for nothing else. But when you start winning main events and you keep winning main events like Colby just did, you're the interim champion, you never lose, they take your belt away. You beat the BMF champion, but they don't ever put the strap around you. I mean, right, in all fairness, at some point, Colby is going to have to put his foot down. Go, I'll do it. I'm in. I'm your guy. So number 1 contenders fight, and I need you to say it first, right? It's one of those situations, and we would all agree that that should be the number 1 contenders fight. We're going to have the number 1 ranked guy in the world, who's Colby, taking on the number 2 ranked guy in the world, who's Chimaev. We're going to see Colby Covington, who's undefeated against anybody that's not named Kamaru Usman. We're going to see Khamzat Chimaev, who's undefeated against everybody, no matter what your name is. It's a hard match, and we're going to ask him to do it for 25 minutes. We got to give him something. And don't try to meet me halfway here, guys. Don't try to meet me halfway here and say that if Chimaev wins, he gets to fight for a world title. I'm aware of that. Colby wins, Colby gets to fight for that same world championship. It would seem, or I'm not sure that you're going to get Colby. Dominic Cruz did an interview. It's the single greatest interview Dominic Cruz has ever done. It was on Wrestling Changed My Life podcast. And Dominic, you must have caught him in some mood, but he dropped everything. You want to know the secrets of the business? You want to know how things work? Go listen to this interview, because Dom just put it all out there. It's the greatest interview that Dominic Cruz has ever given. Because it was, you ask the question, I'm going to answer the question. But one thing that Dominic said is, look, you're both doing something. You've got your company, your personal brand, and it needs to be in line with what the organization wants to do. Now, don't ever tell the organization no. This is Dominic Cruz talking. Don't ever tell the organization no. Tell them yes. But then follow up and get a commitment. Where does it take me if I win? If there's no plan, or there's not a strategy, or you don't believe it takes you anywhere, call me with a different idea. This was Dominic talking. Dominic said, you say yes. You take their advice, but you got to lock them in. Where does this go from here? So that's a very common thing. I bring that to you because it's fresh in my head, and that's coming from one of the greatest to have ever done it. He's got a seat at the table, and his opinion matters. Not to mention he's very intellectual with the sport, and this is how he did it. Okay, fine. I would imagine that Colby will say something like that. And I just don't know that, hey, we'll see, is going to solve the problem if coming out of the other side of the media is if Chimaev wins, he fights for a world championship. I just think there's too much to ask there in a 5-round situation where you're bringing your interim champion, you're bringing your BF champion, you haven't put a belt around him at all. You're bringing your number 1 guy ranked in the world. Everybody else ranked number 1 gets to fight for the world championship except him. I mean, well, what's he got to do? If he can never get a world championship fight, that's okay too, but let's tell him now. Let's just be real honest with Colby and tell him that now. You had your opportunity. As a matter of fact, you had it twice. You get to remain the number 1 contender. You get to remain a main event, and you can't go any higher than this until Kamaru Usman either loses or retires. But we got to tell him now, and I don't think anybody has told him. So we've got to do that, or we've all got to agree. The number 1 guy in the world gets to fight for the world championship. Your interim champion gets to fight for a championship. Your now BMF champion gets to fight for everybody gets to do it in that. It's all the same guy. Your interim champion, your BMF champion, your number 1 guy in the world are all the same guy in Colby Covington. There has to be a path to get him back to a title fight. And you know what? My entire question to you guys, the entire premise is, what is Kamaru Usman thinking right now? I don't think Kamaru Usman should ever have to entertain the Colby Covington topic again. I can tell you till I'm blue in the face that Colby should get a world title fight. Kamaru Usman should not have to put the world title up against Colby again. You see how those can't both be true? It's a weird situation. It's a unique situation. But I do believe if you were Kamaru Usman, and you know that you don't have the actual power to dismiss anybody, you can try, and you could do that in the media, you could try to do what's best for you, but at the end of the day, you don't actually have that magic wand. But you do now have an opportunity to get rid of one of them. I got 2 problems. One's named Usman and one's name's Colby. I can't solve them both, but I can get rid of one of them. I can make them go against each other, and whoever's left standing can come see me. That's probably a deal you're going to want to take. That's probably as good as it's going to get. 25 minutes with those two buffoons, and they're going to be different. It ain't going to be better when they come out of it. So Kamaru would have a little bit of a bump there. He would now also get to see what it is he needs to see. He would be able to form his own game plan and his own strategy. The line's got Colby the favorite guys, but it's both. It's both a negative 100. One was 120, one was 180. I mean, this is dead even money, and that's the correct line. What those two could go out and do to one another, my goodness. But that's not the topic. The topic is, how does Kamaru Usman feel about it? And I think if I had to predict and guess, based on the circumstance, based on the situation, and based on the idea that he would have the power to get rid of one of them as long as he agrees to take on to whichever one is still standing, I think is a deal that Kamaru would be interested in taking.